Since well before Canada and the U.S. made any agreements about looking after the Great Lakes, First Nations communities relied on and took stewardship of these waterways. Today, that's no less true as hundreds of Indigenous communities maintain crucial connections to the lakes. Joining us now for more, Isidore Day. He is Ontario Regional Chief for the Chiefs of Ontario. And France Picotte. She is chair of the Métis Nation of Ontario. And Chief Day, it's good to see you again. You've been here many times.
It's good to be here.
And Madam Chair, your first time here, and I think on television as well?
No.
Not quite?
Not quite.
But first time here. Okay, good. It's a pleasure to have you here and nice to meet you. I want to go back to the history here. Chief Day, get us started. How important have the Great Lakes been for Indigenous nations living near them?
Well, I think there's a lot to be said about the historical perspective, and that being we all need water. We've got water in front of us here today, but we've got an infinite connection to the water through harvesting, through water ceremonies, basically a way of life. Our people have always known that most of our being is made of water. Most living things are made of water, and that was something that our people seen as not so much the right aspect of it, but the responsibility and the obligations that we would have to the water. And that being said, a lot of our ceremonies and protocols are about the water and the responsibility of such.
Madam Chair, how would you describe the connection between the Métis Nation of Ontario and the Great Lakes in this province?
Well, very similar to what Chief Day was saying. We're very connected to the water. I mean, we're born, our first instances are in water. We're born out of water. And also for the Métis, it was our transport, our highways. And that's how, because we were born into the fur trade, out of the fur trade. And that was our highway, that was our route. So along with using it, and like we still do, we have responsibility to it also. And I think we hold that very high up in what we do.
Chief Day, you hinted at this in your first answer, but I'd like a little more information about this. The spiritual connection to the lakes. In your everyday activities, in your ceremonies, describe that for us if you would.
Well, the first instance of water is the child is actually in the womb and surrounded by water. Many elders, they have been given instruction about how to teach as early as toddlers, what the purpose and the importance of water is, and that water comes in many forms. It comes in human form. It comes in the form of in the air. It's in rivers. It's in lakes. It's in animals, and it's something that we refer to as the lifeblood of Mother Earth. And we know the value system is based on the fact that without water, we will perish. It's very important to underscore that women in our culture, Indigenous culture, are the ones that are predominantly responsible for the water because of the connection of the birthing cycle, and it's one that in today's perspectives and the discussions that we're having around the protection of the Great Lakes is very much people like Josephine Mondamin who took the time to walk around the Great Lakes and continues to walk on behalf of water. So the prominence of water from a spiritual sense, it's very deep, and it's one we could speak days and volumes on, and it's a never-ending discussion.
Tell me that name again, Josephine?
Josephine Mondamin.
And she is who?
She is somebody, she's a Anishinaabe. She's from Manitoulin Island. She walked around the Great Lakes over the last decade, and her efforts are to raise awareness. And it was at a time when we really were not so much focused on water, but what she saw pollution in the Great Lakes, and she saw that her role in her clan, being a fish clan, she felt it was important to raise that level of awareness, and she pretty much dedicates her life to teaching, so much so that she's an advisor to Minister Glenn Murray on the Great Lakes Guardianship Council in the Great Lakes.
He, of course, Ontario's Environment and Climate Change Minister. Yes. How about for you? A similar spiritual connection to the Great Lakes?
It's very similar spiritual connection. I mean, our people do our our knowledge transfer also around the lakes. And the water for them is very, very important, as Chief was saying. That's from where we start. The other thing, too, is that we got to realize that water is everywhere, but it transports our essential nutrients. It transports our food and the food of the plants and the animals, and it also sometimes transports pollution because we put it there, but it's so much a big part of not only who we are, but a big part of our land and of the earth that we live on, that if we don't take care of it, then we put everything in jeopardy, everything in peril.
The Métis history in Ontario goes back how far? How many years?
Oh, it goes back as far as, you know, that they were born, Métis were born out of First Nations women and European men, which made mixed breed. And I hate using the word breed because I was raised.
Has a connotation nowadays.
Yes, I remember describing myself as a mutt. But anyhow, that was then. It was trying to make people understand who we are.
So it's talking 400 years anyway.
We've been here for like ever. Part of our heritage has been here forever. And then we came together as a people with the same history and the same values and the same stories. And, you know, that's how we became a people.
So when you talk about the connection to the water, you're talking about birch bark canoes 400 years ago?
I'm talking about birch bark canoe. I'm talking about the first economy of Canada, which was the fur trade. All the transporting of goods back and forth, the furs going out to the European countries and the goods that they were trading for going into more Western Canada. And yeah, it's been a big, big part of who we are.
Chief Day, I again want to follow up on your second answer because in 2008 you wrote a declaration to protect the Great Lakes, and in it you wrote that the Anishinaabeg, Mushkegowuk, and Onkwe women are the holders of the rights to the water.
Right.
You touched on that in your previous answer, but can you go into that into some more detail?
Yeah, I think it more speaks about the responsibilities and the obligations, and again, it's very important to underscore the question you just asked Franz about the history of the Métis, because when we look at our responsibilities, they're rooted in our nationhood and our responsibilities as First Nation people. And prior to contact, you know, when there were no Europeans here, when there were no Métis here, there were existing nations here, and those nations, they all have an affinity and all have since time immemorial, many protocols and ceremonies that really are about the water and the connection that our people had to the water. What happened in 2008, again, Josephine Mandamin and others, Henry Lickers and Dean Jacobs, you know, these individuals are scientists, they're knowledge keepers about the water and the environment. It was those individuals that helped guide the political discussion because, you know, we were at odds with some of the issues around development and the policies of government, but it was these knowledge keepers and the spiritual people that said, you know, we need to keep focused and we have to ensure that we declare what it is. It's not so much about the right and the economy, it's about what the responsibilities are and what our place is in terms of ensuring that we do our part to help protect the water and the Great Lakes for generations to come.
So given that approach, how would you compare that, which you just described, to what you saw as the European settlers' approach and their connection to the water?
Well, I have to be you know, very clear about this one, is that the colonial exploits of the Europeans when they landed here, it was based on terra nullius, which means there's nobody on the land. This is an empty place, there's nobody that lives here. And you know, much of what we see in current lands and resource policy and the perspectives are based on exploitation. And exploitation meaning expansion, railways, waterways, looking at you know, deforestation. So much of the views of European settlers, we are still feeling the impacts of that today. But in the Declaration, it talks about the prophecies, and it said, our prophecies, that there would come a time when Indigenous people would be looked upon again to help guide out of a terrible mess and outcome of exploitation and colonialism and capitalism. And
Have we reached that time?
we've reached that time probably decades ago, but we've just not noticed it up until this point. We're now experiencing climate change and a list of other issues that are pointing to the reality that we all need to start working together.
Madam Chair, you wanted to add?
Yeah, I wanted to add that we as Métis people have inherited many of our First Nations customs and culture and way of doing it. We also have inherited some of the European ways of doing it. And we've been managed to meld it in such a way that we have great values where the land and the people and the animals are, especially where the water is also, that it's a combination of the best of, I want to say the best of both worlds, and we made it our own. So in coming together, when we became a nation, this is who we became. And we didn't become part of this or part of that. We made ourselves whole with all the best of both.
Which is the big lake they call Gitchigumi?
Lake Superior.
Lake Superior. Let's talk about that one. Based upon the treaty history, your knowledge of the treaty history around Lake Superior, how much claim do Indigenous nations have to that lake, in your view?
Well, based on the fact that the treaties talk about sanctioned settlements, they talk about harvesting rights, they talk about annuities, they talk about governance and authority to be able to make treaties. Our people lived on the lands, and much of the treaties in those land settlements had to do with the ability to mobilize traditional activities like hunting and fishing. And if you look at the treaties, the Robinson Huron and Robinson Superior, many of the settlements are on the Great Lakes Basin. And as a result of that, it's not only implied, but it's a given based on the sanctioning of those harvesting rights that the Great Lakes were integral to and very much part of the treaty. And to note, there was never any surrendering of those waters and riparian rights that we still claim today, that we very much are not so much rooted in the right to be able to claim, but it's more the ability to assert jurisdiction and responsibility to help take care of the Great Lakes.
I think we have heard, yes, Madam Chair, thanks to the efforts of Chief Day and others, about land claims and claims on the Great Lakes by First Nations. But what about Métis nations in Ontario? Do they make claims, similar claims?
Well, yes, we have similar claims because we have the history going back to the treaties also. There have been promises made to the Métis that were never upheld by the Crown. Mm-hmm. That's a whole other discussion, but there was definitely, there's half-breed adhesions. There's, and I hate using half-breed adhesions, but that's what they're called. There were petitions all the way through saying, come and deal with us. There was promises of land. And that caused a lot of hardship for the Métis in being able to sometimes access for harvesting, which we have the right in Section 35 to harvest.
Section 35 of what?
Of the Constitution, sorry.
Okay.
But we have the right to harvest, but that also gives us the responsibility to make sure that there are, the animal has a right to live also, that the fish have a right to live, that the water has a right to be pure. So we have the right to harvest, definitely. We have the responsibility to harvest.
Does the Government of Canada recognize your rights, yes, and responsibilities?
They recognize the rights, definitely, and the responsibility. We've got court cases, but the responsibility is really important to our rights, because what's the use having rights if you got nothing to exercise your rights with? So you need to be responsible to make sure that your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, and so on, have access to all those resources, have access to good drinking water, have access to the fish, to the land. So we think that that's very important to who we are and to how we govern ourselves.
You wanted to add, Chief Day?
Yeah, I think this is it's a really important discussion, and respectfully, Franz, and the Métis community in Ontario. It's very important that we look at the history now and we look at some of the jurisdictional ambiguity that exists now. The reality is what gave First Nations the ability to make treaty was the fact that we had inherent rights. Those inherent rights, produced and are evidenced in the treaties. So therefore, the treaties did not surrender, our lives and our entire existence to the Crown to be subservient to. So the treaty-making process itself, it still remains. So the authority and ability we have to make treaties still exists. So that responsibility and jurisdiction still applies. So why would we then see a situation where there's another group of people that would come after? And you said you were, produced out of the relationship with the Crown. Why then?
No, we were produced out of a relationship, not with the Crown.
With the treaties, you said.
The treaties, the Crown at the treaty, the Crown. We wanted to be involved. We
Yes.
wanted to be implicated.
Yes.
The Crown said yes. Sometimes they promised us land. Sometimes they said, we'll come back. So the honor of the Crown was not respected. That's what I said.
So again, then I'll make the point that there's two parties there. And First Nations still hold clear to the fact that we have the authority to work those issues through. And that's where we're at now. We fast forward to 2016. We still have those debates and those unresolved issues. And if there's going to be any decisions made, we've got an opportunity to address major issues like environment. But we also have an opportunity to address outstanding issues like our jurisdiction on citizenship. The Métis people are Anishinaabe people. They are Haudenosaunee people. They are linked into the lineage and the ties, the familial ties, the kinship. This is not something that we argue because it's true. What it is who had the authority to set up that power structure. It wasn't just the Crown, it was First Nations who were here prior to contact that entered into treaty as a result of inherent rights.
I watched your face carefully during that answer, and I wonder whether you sign on to everything he just said.
No, not everything. Some of the things he said I fully support. We have relationships, we have familial ties. I have nieces and nephews and cousins that are First Nations. And I will never speak for First Nations or against First Nations because that's not who I am.
You're Métis.
I'm Métis.
It's different.
And it's different. We have similarities, but we have our rights are equal rights. They're different rights. They're equal rights. Our ability to govern ourselves, our ability to exercise our rights are our abilities. They don't derive from any leftover First Nations vestige that we might have.
Okay.
They come from who we are as a Métis people.
Let me try this then. Chief Day, I want to know, one of the things that's been made abundantly clear all week long on this program is the environmental degradation of the Great Lakes, going back, if you want to talk industrially speaking, more than 100 years. And although significant efforts are being undertaken to clean things up, there's still a heck of a long way to go. And I want to know how the environmental degradation of the Great Lakes has affected the way Indigenous people can lead their lives in this province today.
Well, obviously, today, as our ancestors have in the past, we can no longer go and take water out of the basin and drink it freely without, fear of there being, high bacteria levels.
Any guess how many of your communities are under boil water advisories?
We've got about 63 in Ontario right now that are under boil water advisory.
And some of those would be on the Great Lakes, wouldn't it?
Very much so.
Yeah.
We've also been quite concerned with the fish. If there are toxins and other deleterious substance in the Great Lakes system, we are seeing this in the fish. We're seeing mercury levels elevated in certain areas, and this certainly has an effect on our ability to consume.
Does it physically and or spiritually disconnect you from the Great Lakes, given that your relationship to the Great Lakes clearly has changed because they're not the source of clean water or food that they would have been hundreds of years ago?
It's a very interesting point that you make through your question, because we now look at the reciprocation of rights and responsibilities. It's not just about what the lake can give to us and provide. We know that we're in perilous times right now with respect to the environment and quality of water. But we can, however, assert the responsibilities and sacred obligations that we as Indigenous people have to the water. So in that, we are now seeing an exciting time where we're seeing clearly that the prophecies, prior to contact, these things were told to us, that our nations would gather, that there would be protocols, water ceremonies that would be important in the future. Those are coming to bear now, and they very much have a place in even how governments work together and respect those protocols, because it actually creates ordinance and semblance around how we are to respect the water.
Madam Chair, any sense of disconnection from the Great Lakes because of the pollution that's in them now?
Oh, definitely. A lot of our people won't eat the fish because of the pollution. So you're backing away from an area that was really important to your culture. And so we see that a lot, and it's unfortunate because they can't exercise that part of their culture that they can't also transmit it to their children or their grandchildren, because you can't go there anymore and you can't do what you used to do.
So as you consider the future of the Great Lakes, what role do you see Métis people playing in the remediation of the Great Lakes, in their future, all of that?
I think we have to work together, First Nations, Métis, non-Indigenous people. We all have to work together in order to fix this, in order to be able to bring it back to what it was, in order to be able to allow us to be able to exercise our culture and eat the fish and swim in that water and drink that water. I don't know if it'll come in my lifetime, but I think that that's what needs to happen. We need to not only advocate for it, but we really need to put energies in it and put energies together. I mean, we don't always agree, but we agree, I think, that we need to work together towards restoring and bringing back the Great Lakes to life.
To that end, let me ask Chief Day about this, because again, one of the things we've learned over the course of the week is there's something called the International Joint Commission, which is 100 years old, Canada and the United States working together to try to deal with the Great Lakes issues. We know that there are federal, provincial, municipal agreements that are in place in an effort to bring the Great Lakes back and get some of the toxins out of the water. How many of those tables would First Nations be at?
Well, we currently have access to much of the process, but we are very concerned at this particular stage in the process with respect to how state governments are interacting with one another through the agreement. We're very much acknowledged. First Nations and tribes are very much prominent language throughout the IJC and its deliberations. I would say that the distinct difference between the Métis and the First Nations are that our connection to the Jay Treaty and how we are recognized through the right to passage across the border, that exists.
What's the Jay Treaty?
With the Jay Treaty was a treaty that was signed in the 1700s. It was the ability to recognize our nationhood and our sovereignty as First Nation people and tribes. It recognized the right to trade, economies, and agreement with Crown governments.
Still in force?
It's still there.
Still,
yeah. And our point in all of the discussion on treaties is that we didn't exist out of the treaties. We had the authority to make treaties and to be beneficiaries of those historical agreements. And where we're now looking to is we now have to ensure that the IJC and other formal bodies start to modernize, because as you indicated, the IJC goes back to the early 1900s. And the modernization must look at the fact that, we've now seen Supreme Court rulings that recognize inherent in the treaty rights, that there is recognition of the infringement of those rights, but that the fact that we have the ability to participate in helping mitigate impacts on the environment. So for us, we've got the capacity now. We've got lawyers, we've got environmentalists, we've got the best of the best. We've got knowledge keepers and scientists. We want to participate. We want to find our formal place within those processes.
You're not deciders, though. You may be participants, but you're not deciders.
Well,
right?
I think that we're getting to a point now where the systems that we put in place, because of the duty to consult within the confines of the Canadian legal framework, there is consultation law now, and we may not be affixed right within the IJC as a decision maker, but the processes that we build around it and underneath it will certainly give us relevance to the ability to help make those decisions.
So are we. We're definitely implicated through the duty to consult. And some of those committees that we sit on, the First Nations sit on, that we sit on, are also decision-making bodies. But through the consulting, the duty to consult, I think that's where we can have a lot of impact, because not only they have to consult First Nations, they have to consult Métis. And if we work together, or even if we don't, we work on our own, we have the same goal. We need to protect that water. And I think that's one way, one good way, but only one of the ways that we have. And we also have, good lawyers and good environmentalists and all of that. And
everybody needs a good lawyer.
Everybody needs a good lawyer, and we have some of the best. But it's who we are as Indigenous people. Also, we work all the avenues that we can, and we're good at it.
I just wonder, as we look at this gorgeous picture back here, who wouldn't want to have a spiritual relationship with something that beautiful? Mm-hmm. But I wonder about the future, and I wonder do you see a time in the not too distant future when you think these things will be pristine enough for you to recapture the relationship you had with the Great Lakes from 400 years ago?
Oh, I really would like to say yes.
But you don't think you can?
It depends on the will, and it's not only the will of the Indigenous people, or it's not only the will of Canada, it's the will of two countries, it's the will of different Indigenous people. Can we come together and work together? I think that's what's going to make the difference.
Chief Day, what's your answer to that?
Well, I'm going to go right to the heart of the issue. Much of what we're seeing in terms of degradation to the land is about the development that has taken place over the last several hundred years. The reality is we've got to stop and rethink what's happened. We have to try and de-entrench some of those things that have been entrenched, like environmental policy that is leaning towards possibly the advancement of oil projects, for example. The reality is we know that the pipelines, talk about impact on the land, the air, and the water. So therefore, that's a development that we need to look at very seriously. And we turn to Canada, United States, and other groups, to recognize that what's happening down in Standing Rock right now is a desperate cry for second sober thought on the potential of mass devastation to the land, to the air.
Standing Rock is where?
Standing Rock is in South Dakota, and it's a pipeline issue where the developer was given clearance to start advancing the construction of this pipeline, and the Standing Rock people, they indicated, no, this can't happen here. There are reasons for this. We need to protect what water we have left. Your point about the question about the future of the water, this is the very thing that Indigenous people fear for our children, is that if we don't stop now, if we don't rethink how to do things, if we don't reconsider oil centrism and look more to clean tech for future energy needs, then chances are we're speeding up the process of devastation, and that's something, as indicated, we all need to work on together.
Nobody's talking about building a pipeline through the Great Lakes, though. Does that not help you?
There are pipeline issues in the Great Lakes right now. There's going to be some discussion on that in the very near future. There's pipelines that run under the Great Lakes right now that traverse from the Canadian to the United States side, and these are things that, say, Chippewa, the Thames, who are going to the Supreme Court of Canada to look at the role of the National Energy Board. They're quite concerned about the fact that pipelines are potentially going to affect the water, and it's something that we all need to take a serious look at. And if you don't know about that, and the next person doesn't know about that, then we're ill-informed to make good decisions, and that's where we have to start.
I think,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I think if we want to see this, it's time to stop and look at the big picture. Look at everything that has the impact on the water and on the Great Lakes. And if we don't look at everything and know everything, then how can we help fix it? Like, how can we do that? So I think it's that time, and that's where we're at. We're probably a little late, but I think there's still hope if we take the time and look at the big picture with everybody around.
Hopefully we've done some of that looking at the big picture all week. Thanks to both of you for coming into TVO tonight.
Thank you.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.